from that point to the next day on for the next several months, the relationship did take a major turn. Despite myself, despite my feeling and at a deep knowing level that this wasn't just to get information about the condominium, that this had become about me, I felt strangely exhilarated and very drawn in to forming a friendship with this man. And I started to calculate in my mind, my God, I better not even tell any of my UFO friends about my researcher friends about this, because they're going to be really paranoid. I'm paranoid about that. So I knew that there was a caveat attached to this. How could I possibly deal with an intelligence agent, seemingly FBI special agent, and reconcile a friendship with someone who had deemed himself the Excyles man? But despite myself, as I said, and all my caveats attached to the fact that I knew that he was trying to move this into a different level, more of a, let's say, a social relationship level, and the fact that he was a married man, which was my number one not to do in my life. I would never. I personally had found it anathema to go out with a married man ever, and also the fact that I had decided on a celibate path right before the ETs made their selves known in my life, which I see now is also not coincidental. That I was feeling tremendously, all I could say is bonded to this man. That at a deep intellectual level, there was something about him that I found undeniably attractive. And yet I felt I had a dual, I was functioning in a dual role. One as a participant and the other as an evaluator. And everything he did and said and all of his activities, which I go into greatly in my book, I evaluated, dissected, and took apart. This is a more difficult. It's very difficult to really discuss this without talking about a feeling level. And I found myself doing and saying things that I had never done or said to any man before. I've been married. I've had a live-in relationship. I've had many relationships with men. Yet I said things to him that I didn't even know that I believed. Like, we are twin souls, that I feel as if he is the other half of me. And yet we hadn't even entered into a sexual relationship or done anything like that. This was on a deeply spiritual level. And I felt it so deeply that it amazed me. I was also able to read his mind, and there were many psychic things that had happened, things that I had predicted psychically and that outpictured the next time I saw him. Also, because of the incidents of surveillance before him, I had set up a way of dealing with this on my phone, of recording things from my answering machine, from my caller ID, in a very rudimentary, inexpensive fashion. I found out a lot of things that were going on my phone that it seemed to evidence even a greater level of surveillance than even I had expected. And when Jordan, from the first moment that I met Jordan, from that first day, there was a great acceleration in these surveillances. Again, that's how I'm able to document so much of what went on, because I did have this ability to monitor my phone and to do things that would not normally have been known, and to be able to ascertain that they were not normal, or of the normal variety. There because of the intensity of feeling, and I would say without question, because of my reservations, Jordan verbally evidenced a lot more desire to move the situation to a physical level, and I certainly had great fear and anxiety about it, and I, besides my moral imperative about his being married man, and but there was a lot of discussion about it. One day I thought, well, now I don't know whether this is a mind control thing or whether this came from my own consciousness. It was just something, because there was so much discussion about it. I just, well, maybe this would be the next level to move this. I'm getting tired of talking about it. And when he came to my home, I said to him, well, what you want to do, I agree. So let's just get it over with. And I mean, certainly that's not very romantic to say, let's get it over, get it over with. And from that point, there was the thing that he seemed to want most was the thing that set the most fear in him. From that point, he said that he thought that they would be because he said he had been surveilled during this period of time that we were together, and that if we did, that there were going to be there was going to be tapes of our experiences that were going to be shown to his children, videotapes, and that he didn't want to do it, and so he just went then to the counter position. And I said, oh, fine, that's okay, whatever you say. But that was, it seemed like that had to happen in order for the next stage that was to follow. Because immediately after that day when he came to visit me, the next thing I knew was that I had received a phone call from Jordan telling me that he had been encountered after leaving the apartment by some intelligence agents that were not FBI, and he was an FBI agent, and that they told him something very important about me and about him, and that he was totally shocked about it. And he said that he then was going to go to Area 51. And Area 51, I don't see how you could go to Area 51 at Nellis. You're South Florida FBI special agent. Okay, you're the ex-file man, but you don't have clearance to do that. But needless to say, he ended up going to Area 51. I had this phone number there. I called him there. I had my friends, the various friends in different places, call that number there. The phone was answered, Dreamland, security police. It's on my phone bill that that number went to Nellis. So for all intents and purposes, it looks like he went there. And the book goes into detail exactly on what he found there. So the bottom line to this is that he, when he called me from there too, he said that I had to remember a certain date in 1960, 1961, 1960, 1962, I can't remember right now. But I had to remember that date, and that it was very, very important that I remember that date, and that it was pivotal for me. And I thought, that's really ridiculous. And then I said, why? And he hung up. And then I remembered something that I had already made notes about, a very strange thing that had happened. I had one year when I went away to college at the University of Tampa in Florida here, coming from Chicago. I just chose to go to Tampa, of all places. And I remember the strange thing that had occurred to me on the beach, in Tampa, which I talked about in my book, which still sets intense fear going through me. And from what it seemed like it shouldn't, in my memory bank, it shouldn't have inculcated that kind of fear in my psyche. There should immense emotional response to my asking questions about that date, and again, he appeared to be almost crying. I knew at an instant, and I said to him, 1962, wasn't that when you were born? At that, he just kind of breathed a great sigh, and hung up the phone again. And I then again, I don't even know why I knew this, but I did know it. I just had this feeling that he was relating this date to me so that I would know that we had a connection that was beyond the romantic, that there was something genetically connected, that we were genetically connected, and that some way I was his mother. And I don't know why I knew that, but I knew that. So the bottom line to this situation and the things that evolved from that was that after his experience in Area 51, further identifying how and for what reason we had been put together, he wrote a report for me. He knew that I was writing a book about my own experiences with interdimensional beings and some of my research. And he wrote a report for me to put in my book. I did not ask him. This was going to be the last-ditch effort that he had to help me understand some more about what had transpired with us and the reason why we felt so close to each other. And he had called me after he got back from Area 51 saying that he would meet me because he had something to give me, which ended up being the report. And then he didn't show up, but he sent the report, or he might even have brought it himself, but I didn't see him, and brought it to my apartment and left it with the security guard, and then called me later on and said with a great, seemingly painful statements that he no longer could be in my life because, for two reasons. One, that there were various levels of the intelligence branches that were now involved with him, and that he thought that he would be the victimizer, and he had ended up being the victim. And that he felt it was wrong to have the feelings that he had for me, knowing that we were connected genetically. And I had an interesting reaction to this whole thing. First, I just was doubting this whole thing. I thought this is some other kind of manipulation. I'm not that naive. There are a lot of things that happened that I didn't like, unanswered questions. And I thought, gee, this is interesting. Now he had kids. He had a couple. At that time, he had one child of his own and two that were stepchildren that he loved dearly. And I thought, gee, I could be a grandmother, and I didn't even have to do anything. And I'm childless. When I was married, I wasn't able to have any children for some unknown reason. I had gone through all of the pain of infertility testing, etc., and for no known reason or ideology, I was not able to have children. So that would be the last thing that I would have expected, that I would have been a mother, and let alone a grandmother, so easily. So I didn't see it as a great tragedy. I thought, gee, this is a great miracle. And he was boo-hooing and thought it was a great tragedy. So I thought, well, that's not the way that I feel. I feel if this is true, it's really a miracle that we found each other this way, no matter whether it was orchestrated or not. But he maintained that he had to separate himself from me because of his feelings and because there was now a war between these two forces, one that had set us up together that were watching us, and the other branch of intelligence that felt that it was wrong and that was feeding him information. So he said that that was it, and that he no longer would be able to maintain a relationship with me or talk to me, but maintain that he would forever always have his feelings of love and concern for me, and in his own way would be watching over me. And that was in February of 1995. I felt he was very sincere about not maintaining connection. He was so adamant in his words that I had no doubt his actions would follow, and that I never would see him again. And I was really very upset at that, mostly because I still had a lot of unanswered questions, and no matter how hard I queried him, and I gave him a very hard time, there was never I never really let down in my evaluation of what he said and what he didn't say. And so in that respect, I felt that that it was not fulfilling for me, and that I would never know any more about our situation. How would I know if I couldn't know from him? During that period of time, after I spoke with him last in February of 1995, he kept his word. I went on to complete my book, and I felt there was a great need for me to do it quickly, because there might be a ways that these forces might try to stop me. And the information that Jordan gave me about the level of government involvement and how the agencies work together to keep this secret, and the infrastructure involved, was not that great of a shock to me, or for any of us that are ufologists and have really deal with this on a daily basis. But the fact that it did come from a working special agent. Now, one thing about Jordan that I forgot to tell you was